So my first book, The Happiness Hypothesis, was a collection of 10 insights from sages around the world that were psychological truths. And one of them is what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That gets at the idea, the psychological principle, of anti-fragility. It's a wonderful term. That's actually a clunky, ugly term, but it was made up by Nassim Taleb because we don't have a word for this in the English language, which is that there are some systems that get stronger if they get pushed around, knocked around. So a wine glass is fragile. If you knock it over, it breaks. Nothing good happens. A plastic cup is resilient. If a kid throws it off the table, it doesn't break, but nothing good happens. But there's some things that have to get thrown off the table. There's some systems that have to get pushed around. And Taleb wrote this book, Anti-Fragile, or Anti-Fragility, because things like the banking system had to be tested, or it gets fragile and collapses. Bones have to be tested, used, or they get weak. If you were to fly to Mars, your bones would get weak. The immune system, if you protect kids from bacteria, if you keep them in a sterile environment, you're damaging their immune system. The immune system has to face challenges in order to learn. Turns out kids are anti-fragile. And when we protect children from unpleasantness, from conflicts, from insults, from teasing, from exclusion, we're preventing their social psychology, we're preventing their social abilities, we're preventing their strength from developing. The subtitle of our book is How Good Intentions and Bad Ideas Are Setting Up a Generation for Failure. By overprotecting our children, we are setting them up to be weak, to be more easily damaged, to be more easily discouraged.
The clip I just showed was of a guy called Jonathan Haidt, who's a social psychologist who's come into my radar in the last couple of weeks, and I couldn't really ignore it. I've seen him everywhere on things. And he's written quite a few books, which are called, one of them's called The Coddling of American Mind, which is about safetyism, which I'll come on to in a minute. He's also written The Happiness Hypothesis, say that quickly, and most recently, he's written a book called The Anxious Generation, and he's done countless studies and data on his work in social psychology, and I listened to a few podcasts with him this week, and he's got some really interesting insights and studies and data on particularly parenting and also how smartphones are affecting children and the Generation Z. I'd really encourage you to look into him. He's got some really interesting insights on this stuff. And I actually thought he'd make me feel super guilty about it, but he didn't actually. He handles it all really well. So I encourage you to listen. And again, like a couple of years ago, when just after Amford retired, we actually did a morning on safetyism, the term safetyism. And I have to give credit to Joel. He did an incredible job that morning, sharing all this information. And it's only taken me 2 years to cotton onto it. So here we are. But I'm going to be sharing a lot of what he said as well. So it might be that you want to go back and listen to that, because I just feel like it's come round and it's really relevant to where we are as a house and where we're going. So the 3 Great Untruths. So Jonathan developed these things called the 3 Great Untruths. And basically he believes that there's certain things that have come into society that he thinks aren't really helping us develop as humans. And the first one is about fragility. So it says, damage is always permanent and can't make you stronger, replaced with the idea that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And that actually what we can be doing is overprotecting ourselves and almost getting caught up in this comfort and safetyism culture, which could be quite damaging. There's the old phrase, prepare the child for the road, not the road for the child. So the rise of coddling and what's called permissive parenting has created environments where we are overprotective and actually undervaluing. And what I mean by that with permissive parenting, so there's lots of different types of parenting generally. You can have your quite extreme ones. You can be a very dominant parent, and you can be a quite permissive parent, it's called, which often is mistaken for gentle parenting, and they're 2 very different things. Because in permissive parenting, you're actually just saying yes to everything, and you're not creating any boundaries at all. And there's this sort of fear of upsetting people and almost over-validating feelings in a way, which can be a little bit too much and a little bit over-coddling. So it's really about finding that happy medium. I mean, God, anyone who's had kids, it's like you just live in this constant state of shame and guilt. But I've actually found understanding this quite helpful, because it's really important to create boundaries and also to let your children get hurt sometimes and to let them go out into the world. And this has very much come at the moment, like, because George is at an age where he is now going out on his own and he's going into secondary school, and I'm having to really loosen the reins a bit and let him experience life. And Sophie, bless her, has been having some friendship issues at school and things, and it's really hard to navigate this stuff because you just want to step in and fix it, but actually it's in their best interest as well to kind of figure some of this stuff out themselves with you as their guide. It's definitely easy to want to jump in. And another example is the rise of allergies. So particularly peanut allergies. What's happened over time is that people have got so frightened of their kids having peanut allergies that as babies they've not actually given them peanuts, and then what's actually resulted is some allergies later on in life because of that kind of overprotectiveness. I actually had a friend when I had George who got told by the health visitor, you need to get your kid more dirty. Your environment is so sterile. It's making him unwell. And she was like, oh. So she ditched the Dettol, and he's a very thriving 11-year-old now. So it's about creating normal immune responses rather than allergic ones. And that can be the same with life, can't it? It's about building up resilience rather than avoiding the risk and creating an allergic response. Basically one where we can easily react, like an allergic response can be where you're easily reactive and feel very easily triggered by something that could have been maybe prevented if we'd faced the risk. So when a baby bird learns to fly, I mean, you've got to look at any other species of parenting and they're just, off you go. It's a very different kind of way, isn't it? It's a bit more hardcore. And they had to learn the hard way. And as hard as it may feel sometimes, it is important for children and us, I don't just want to make this about parenting, and us as adults, to get broken, to feel hurt, to feel pain, face challenge, feel uncomfortable. And I know it's not nice, but it's part of growth. So with children, it's proven that unstructured and unsupervised time is essential for resilience. And autonomous people. Autonomous meaning that people who can then govern themselves. You can make your own choices a bit better. You become a bit streetwise, basically. And I understand there are some extreme cases here. So, like, I'm not talking about cases of abuse or exploitation or things that are quite extreme, but more the everyday coddling and overprotectiveness and the attitude of avoiding anti-fragility. So, as mentioned in the clip, anti-fragile. This term basically means that it supports the view that some systems need to break and allow for breakage through stress, shock, mistakes, faults, or failures. So, moving on. One could say that the church has been guilty of coddling in more recent times. The older church became more of a structure for control and keeping the local folk in line with moral compass. But later on, and probably in more recent decades, its focus has shifted to be more about helping and serving people, which it doesn't sound bad, to be fair. And then in evangelical churches, it was, we had to save everyone. But what about when you don't go along with the narrative? Q and the former Rock Church always faced criticism for its edgy approach and challenging of beliefs. But has church felt like it's the place to feel safe? Has it felt the place for you to feel safe? But what about if you've gone against the grain? We were told to be Christ-like, weren't we? I mean, what does that even mean, really? What does that even mean? And Brennan Manning is a guy who was he a monk? Yeah, he was a monk, and he was outcast because he was an alcoholic. So his faith and his religion let him down. But he was actually he's a really switched on guy who's got a lot of really good things to say. And then also, Richard Rohr even feels that church isn't a safe place for people to be themselves. It can become a bit of a performance because you're trying to kind of be Christ-like or meet these standards. And that's kind of what we've been a bit guilty of over the years. And have we been guilty of being oversensitive to challenge and change, too fragile? Can we look to hold on to things that once were helpful, but we now cling to for safety and comfort? Do we have systems that we need to break? Do we try and avoid failure? not accept fault, and not allow the stresses of living penetrate our beliefs? Has this been damaging to our own development? Not just in church, in relationships, in families, in your job life. Is it the church's job to be more than that? Is it better to be a think tank of ideas and values that can be challenged and discussed freely? Can you have both? Do we try and avoid failure? Hang on. Yeah, not accept fault and not allow the stresses. No, I have said that. Sorry. I propose that by becoming overcautious or unchangeable in our structures of safety within family and work life and relationships and communities, we can become quite stuck. We look to deny our vulnerabilities and cling to a safety and comfort that's actually hindering us and not healing us. Here at Q, it's important to be a source of support and help, but if it becomes an enabling culture that doesn't provide any challenge, is that actually helpful? I'll leave you with that for a minute while I wipe my nose. Or has church as we knew it become the very thing that can hold people back in not being challenged with new ideas and new thinking? As Kev talked about when he challenged us on the idea of church and the ecclesia, was it actually always meant to be a place of discussion and decision making, rather than the model of we sing a song of worship, hear a message from God which reiterates our position of servanthood, know your place, and then through Jesus we are saved and have superiority over those who are not, so we can confidently go into the world and tell people they're wrong and we are right. Sounds brutal, but even in my church lifetime, that was the common narrative. The deconstruction process, it was bad for business, really. Because once you encourage self-help, then you're no longer required. Challenging dogmatic beliefs that had stuck around way too long created a massive change for Q. But in truth, its job was to free people's minds and lead them on a journey of self-discovery. Is there even a right or wrong way? The prodigal son. He found his awakening at the pig trough, one could say, while the older son stayed home and moaned. Are we better off staying in the comfort of home, or are we better finding our way to the pig trough? Is the pig trough a place of desolation and desperation, or actually where the point your morality conflicts with life's experiences and we hit a point of challenge? And I'm going to talk a bit more about that in my next bit. But now for the first discussion. I'll give you 10 minutes, it's a goodie. Is it the job of the church to cover people's needs and simply be a help to those in need? Or is it its job to empower people to be better equipped mentally? So basically to think independently, challenge their status quo, and expand conscious minds to be better able for everyday living. Or can it be both? Discuss.
The next untruth is always trust your feelings. It may sound wise, it may sound romantic. But wise people around the world have noticed that we don't react to the world as it actually is. We react to the constructions, the perceptions. Epictetus said, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our interpretations of things." This is the basis of cognitive behavioral therapy. Aaron Beck, a psychiatrist in the 1960s, noticed that depressed and anxious people have a way of constructing these beliefs that I'm bad, the future is bad, my future, the world is a bad place, and they're mutually reinforcing. And this is the way the world feels to them. And if you can improve their thinking and break up those beliefs, they're released from the depression. What we've begun seeing on campus is that students are encouraged to follow their feelings. If they feel offended by something, then they have been attacked. They're supposed to not question those feelings. But part of wisdom is the ability to say, now wait a second, are there other ways to look at this? These are crucial skills for critical thinking. These are crucial skills for mental health. And we need to be teaching young people at all stages to question their first interpretations, look for evidence, and improve the way they interpret the world. So untruth number 2, emotional reasoning
always trust your feelings. If you get a strong feeling, it's always going to be objectively true. I loved the quote, "It's not the things themselves that disturb us, but our interpretations of things." We're always taught a little bit, aren't we? Trust your instincts, go with your gut. And actually, this is a tricky one for me because I'm actually a gut person. I feel instincts and I do often trust them. But is it always the right course of action to be so reactionary and just go with your feelings? It felt like the right thing to do. Can we trust our feelings and our interpretations? And should these be what drives our choices? Now, I'm a big advocator, as you've all heard in the past, of the importance of emotions and how they serve us. But that's actually the key. They serve us. We don't serve them. Feelings are important in telling us something and being a guide in the sense that they can expose stuff in us that might need challenging. Putting them in the driver's seat is definitely not the right way, in my opinion. So it becomes about not reacting to the world as it actually is, but how we interpret it. So it's important, therefore, to break up the beliefs and learn to respond differently. We can feel under such pressure to go along with the dominant view. But what if we asked, is the opposite of what I believe also true? We've literally just had that on our table. Are there other views and perspectives I can look at this from? Do we need to be willing to question ourselves and even let our beliefs fail us? Have your beliefs ever failed you? Should they? Do we need to make room for other perspectives, or is holding on to a belief in the dominant view stoic? Do we need to hold ourselves under scrutiny and be self-checking? What if, by holding on to our beliefs and structures and going with our own agendas and feelings, maybe we're actually bypassing a reality that we don't want to face? Are you bypassing a reality that you don't want to face? I propose that part of wisdom is to look at things from other perspectives, and it's important, as said in the clip, for critical thinking and our overall mental health. And I also propose that facing reality in all its angles is a better way. Then we can make more informed decisions and be able to self-regulate. Back to the prodigal. He wanted to figure things out for himself, and his father actually let him. He encouraged him, and he even sponsored him. He gave him the inheritance he said he wanted and let him go. He gave him an opportunity to fail. Do we believe God would guide us away from a moral trajectory, from the dominant view, the common narrative? Were we ever meant to be restricted by a religious structure? Are we encouraged to go out and have the opportunity to fail? Did the model actually take us to deconstructing it? Pause while I turn my page. Where do I find who I really am? The son, one could say, only found who he was at the pig trough. Then he goes back, possibly not even as a son anymore, but as an equal. He found himself and came back to his father, no longer as a son, but someone who could embrace his wholeness, his humanity and his awakening, and that was celebrated. I've had a pig trough moment, and if I was to answer the question we said before, this would be how I would. So when I came to the Rock Church, I was in need, and I got help. Chris took me under her wing and nurtured me and loved me and helped me. But she also challenged me, and I became part of the Rock Church. I bought into it. I could come up here and repeat everything that was said like this. I knew it back to back. And then my brother died, and I had to ask myself the question, do I believe he is going to hell? Because that's what my beliefs would tell me. That's what the narrative was telling me. But how could I look my mum and dad in the eye and think, your baby who suffered has gone to hell? Sorry. It was a big thing for me because I didn't believe that. Something in me was screaming, no, that doesn't fit right. That isn't the God that I love. And actually, what came after that was a whole heap of choices which led me down all these different paths and difficulties and conflicts. And I was really conflicting with the narrative and how my life was folding out, and I was being advised and helped, but things just weren't clicking. And actually, I had to find my own way. I had to ask these questions. I had to go there. I had to go there to this place, which was difficult and hard. But in the end, I found myself. I had to have my beliefs challenged and my stability rocked. Just like with the shack that we've all heard about and seen the film and read the book. Sometimes you need to go there to find your peace. The dark night of the soul. Don't avoid everything that will challenge your beliefs and your faith. Sometimes it's necessary to figure things out for ourselves and break away from the model, even if that journey takes you to a bad place. I just want to reiterate that that could just mean something that's uncomfortable and challenging, and where your beliefs clash with what life's saying to you. Rock bottom and the pig trough. Rock bottom, though, suggests that there's a way up. So be encouraged. There is always a way up. So meaning of belief. The actual one definition of belief is actually to wish to be. That's a lot more fluid than it is. It's good to keep our beliefs open to other perspectives, because that's the evolution of your mind. So with me, I was helped and nurtured, but I was also challenged and encouraged to find my own way. That was important. So I believe you can have both. Abraham, he was told to leave his father's house, his country, and his culture. The most important thing for him was to get into the new land. Is leaving our point of safety and comfort necessary for our awakening and finding our new land? To risk failing, being hurt, being vulnerable, being broken. That's where my greatest awakening came, in my hardest time. It's the exact definition of the pioneers versus settlers we're so often speaking about here. Settling can leave you stuck. It's important to discover new lands, new ideas, new thinking. It's okay to get muddy and get your hands dirty, a rugged life on the trail, in order to find a different place, new land, the new frontier, a different model to your life and spirituality. If someone is struggling, we throw them some water, lift them up, and even chuck them on the back of the horse and get them riding again. We can't stop or slow down. We keep moving. The best way for this now is to open yourself to the new perspectives. Listen to other views, other religions, other practices. Look for the new land and what it can feed you. And we actually openly encourage that here at Q. Come, let us reason together. That's why we've moved into these discussion-based meetings. We know that they may feel uncomfortable at times, but that's actually the whole point. We want to help guide us all away from our comfort zones and listen to others' opinions, others' stories, others' points of view. It's healthy to challenge what we think and be open to that. And I'm not saying it's easy. And I'm not saying, to be fair, you have to adopt or agree to them. You can still disagree on things. But it's just about encouraging more independent thinking and not being your own echo chamber. When the common narrative is so easy to articulate and you struggle to articulate a new way of thinking, then to me it just proves that it's fresh and evolving and you're still learning. It's good not to know it all. There's room for learning them. And evolution gets momentum that way. You may not agree with what I'm saying this morning, and that's absolutely fine. But at least be willing to ask yourself why you don't, and be willing to ask yourself if what I'm saying may be true. So, next discussion. Have you been to the pig trough where your beliefs failed you? What was your moment? How do you think different perspectives can help you, or do you think they can't? Is it important to have healthy discussion? And has that helped you in ways you didn't expect? I'll give you 10 minutes.
The third great untruth, my favorite, the worst and most dangerous and darkest of all, is that life is a battle between good people and evil people. If you think about it for a moment, who are we? What is our species? We evolved in small-scale societies that were locked in struggle with other small-scale societies. Human nature is really, really finely tailored for intergroup conflict, for tribal warfare. This is the way our ancestors lived for a long time. Now that we've transcended it, we're so desperate for it, we've invented team sports, fraternities. We love these sorts of competitions. Our brains are made for it. Now, it can be fun, or it can get dark, and it can lead to racism, all kinds of forms of bigotry. If we're creating multi-ethnic environments on campuses, and in most of our organizations, we're struggling to increase diversity, what you should obviously be doing is turning down the tribal sentiments, is emphasizing what we have in common. But on some college campuses and in some high schools, we see forms of education, forms of training that teach students to make more and more distinctions, to see more and more binary dimensions between people, where the people who are high are bad, the people who are low are good. The more we encourage people to see the people around them as good versus evil, the harder it's going to be to create an inclusive, diverse environment.
Okay, the third untruth, us versus them. Life is a battle between good people and bad people. And, you know, if we're honest, the church got a bit like that, very us and them, the church and the world. We definitely had one sphere and there was another sphere, and we couldn't listen to the views of that sphere because our sphere was right. And there became this superiority. And it's been unhelpful, really. It's been unhelpful for growing the community now in a 2024, when that's kind of just not accepted anymore. But actually, if you look around the world, there's so much hate and so much kind of opposing views, and it can become quite ugly and unhelpful. And I just think that whole attitude of looking at life in that way, of what's good and what's bad, what's evil, what's right, just doesn't do us well. And we can have healthy competition. We can have opposing views and different perspectives. You can disagree. That's the beauty of life. But the moment it starts becoming an ism or something that's so extreme that we're just promoting hate, it's just creating division, which just doesn't help. And I've said it before and so many times here, and I will continue to bang this drum, and I feel like this is always my conclusion, to be fair. But dualistic measures, dualistic thinking, it's just unhelpful. Because I think everything's part of the story. Like, if I was to believe that Ian's death was wrong, I'm opening myself up to so many levels of resentment, of anger and betrayal. Betrayal of God, disappointment, and immense anguish. Was it tragic? Yes. Was it traumatic? Yes. Did I wish it to be? No. Do I think it had to happen? No. Did it happen? Yes. Is it just an unfortunate series of sad events? Yes. Sorry, but it's shit, but it's true. But flowers grow from shit. Do I have the opportunity to thrive and grow in empathy, in understanding, and in knowing that love, deep love, faith and hope can all be found in the depths of pain, struggle and awakening? Absolutely. So what do we all have in common? Life and all its complexities and issues. We all feel sadness. We all feel pain. We can all feel joy and be connected in our realities, in our stories, in sharing our journeys, in offering our perspectives and being willing to listen to others. Sometimes it's just good to listen. Embracing life as a whole, I believe, was always the intention. God didn't want us to understand good and evil, not to hold anything back from us, but because it will never serve you. Seeing life with all its ebbs and flows and ups and downs is part of the human existence and our dance with the divine. Let's not create separation from each other. Yes, there are opposing views right now in the politics. You know, God, there's so many extreme views going around because everyone's angry. And you've got a right to be. The country's a mess. But just don't be hateful. Like, people won't agree with you. Find a better way. Let's stay classy, Q. Come on. If the prodigal had held to his beliefs, he could have ended up staying at the pig trough, never coming out of his rock bottom. It's easy to stay there, I can tell you, but what a sad life that would be. So the models that we create with family and church, relationships, and the expectations of rights and wrongs of that, the good and evil measures mean that when something bad happens, they can break so easily. Yes, you may get a sense of safety and comfort from these models, but you're at risk of never completely feeling reality, of seeing reality. And I get it, reality isn't pretty sometimes, but better to be working with a reality than truth than a structure that's actually just holding you together and not empowering you to grow in your reality. Don't avoid vulnerability. And I saw a thing on Facebook recently, and it said this: for a long time, it had seemed to me that life was about to begin, real life. But there was always some obstacle in the way, something to be gotten through first, some unfinished business, time still to be served, or a debt to be paid. Then life would begin. And at last it dawned on me that these obstacles were my life. Eckhart Tolle believes that only by becoming vulnerable, which is the letting go of the resistance, can you discover your true invulnerability, which basically means, this is lovely, that you will have the strength and the appropriate tools to withstand attack, face adversity, embrace risk, and confront challenge. So in conclusion, why have I shared all this today? I believe Q needs to be a forum for ideas to blossom, opinions to be shared, debates to be had in order to discover new lands and enrich our lives with new thinking, fresh perspectives that are ever evolving, and to expand our minds to be better equipped to face adversity, challenge, life's obstacles, and the ever-expanding horizon of truth and love. Like with children, we want them to grow and evolve, be happy and healthy. And we can do this for them and ourselves now by not stifling with overcautious safety and coddling models of comfort and conformity, but to let go of the things that no longer serve us, embrace our vulnerability, and let new ideas flow in the framework of our understanding, grounded on the value that we are loved, we are whole, and we remain curious. This will create a diverse and inclusive environment where people can thrive and that true community can be built on. So, that's me. Thank you.